Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation.
Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
Around me I see frustration. I've been looking around for salvation. To life and you.
Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
To your stories. All around me I see frustration. I've been looking around for salvation. To life and you.
Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
Around me I see frustration. Looking for somewhere to go. If you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And I do apologize for that double play. It does happen from time to time, not very often, but hey, it's part of the journey, as is finding my little Skype little button. There we go. I've got it. We're all set with that too. Now, let's get into tonight's subject. Tonight I'm going to be talking to Deon Robello from DCX Precious Metals about how events taking place in the last year are impacting the price of physical silver and gold, and of course looking ahead into 2023. After this I will be talking about my strategy of investing in precious metals, largely based around old silver and gold coins, and you'll understand why I do this, but also including medallions like those produced by DCX, as well as bars, precious metal bars. I've been doing this most of my life, starting with my time at Barclays in the mid to late 1970s, and it's a rather unusual form of retirement. It's basically my pension fund. So I do not have a pension fund per se, because I don't believe in fiat money. All right, that's enough of my little lecture. Let's get the show started. I'll get Deon on. Here we go. Hi, Deon.
Hi, Scott. How are you?
Excellent. How are you, buddy?
I'm very good, thank you. Considering we've had load shedding and even today the challenges, but I think pretty much every South African is feeling it, and we have to either make the decision to just get on with it and work as effectively as we can during this period, and find better ways of doing things. But yeah, other than that, we've been good.
At 6 a.m. this morning, we were just starting a little pre-recording, and bang, it all just went dead.
Well, there you go, Scott.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's South Africa today.
Well, I tried to negate all, to make sure that we avoided any possible load shedding or power cuts. And, I came into the office, made sure that I'd spoken to our security guard. He said, no, generators running, everything's online. And at 6 o'clock it hit, and it literally went off. And it turns out that it was he was supposed to override it, and he hadn't. So it took an extra 20 minutes. Hence, we are now talking live.
That's it. Now let's get right into this. What were some of the movements
Yes.
we saw regarding precious metals in 2022?
Oh, Scott, the big thing in 2022 is, we came out of the global pandemic, and, a lot of that had eased up, and it was literally the first year since 2020 where things were getting back to normal. But we know that that wasn't the case. Straight away in early of 2020, Russia went and invaded Ukraine. That pushed the gold price up to over $2,000 an ounce in mid-March, early to mid-March. And, subsequently there's been a bit of a pullback, but as we've hit towards the end of 2022, gold has just been climbing consistently every single week. And we're at about $1,900 an ounce as we speak. Probably just a little bit over that right now. Again, we look at the rand dollar. The rand also went from 16 and went over to as high as, I think, the high 18s. And there's been a bit of a retrace, a pullback, and we're sitting around 17 there. But again, these things are all short term. Silver has also, the beginning of the year, there was a bit of a pickup, and then into around also the same period, March, there was definitely a pickup, and there's been a bit of a pullback. But as the year ended and the new year began, we've seen the prices really starting to push up. Platinum, funny enough, has been the dark horse of the lot and has been the big achiever, while everyone else has been focusing on the other precious metals. And consistently, it has been growing through the year. The pullbacks were far less, and a lot of it has to be attributed to the fact that Russia is the biggest supplier of palladium in the PGMs, and platinum, South Africa is the biggest supplier of platinum. But with the war in Russia, that forced a lot of those mines, all Russia, to be exporting their palladium. Especially in the AutoCAD market, they've definitely moved back, and there's been a major move back into platinum, into the AutoCADs. So it's exciting. I mean, there's a lot of things to unpack tonight, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but that's just a rough outlook of what 2022 was about.
Yeah, well, look, we live in exciting times, and I'm excited because I think precious metals, I personally think they're going to increase by at least 50% this year, if not double. Now, that's my perception. I'm not a financial advisor, but I'm really excited by the potential of precious metals in the world we live in today. Now, we spoke previously of a sovereign default. And if that happens, well, then precious metals would just be a no-brainer. But is a sovereign default still on the cards?
Scott, yeah, absolutely. And, last year with our, we had a surplus as far as from a tax perspective, and that was largely to commodities and the strength in commodities. But we are still nowhere near in this country. Today, in fact, or actually read it yesterday, Treasury is seeking to go procure another $1 billion loan.
Wow.
I mean, as it stands right now, if you want the numbers, national debt is over $3 trillion. Interest we pay is roughly about $170 billion per year.
Hang on, is that dollars or rands?
That's 170 billion rands. My apologies.
Yeah, and 3 trillion rands. So that's about $300 billion. No, but yes. It's less. It's about 250 billion. Anyway,
my apologies, but
that's okay.
And then roughly, if you had to break that down, every South African pretty much owes or it has 55 million rand that the government has taken out on their behalf.
Wow.
So yes, it's not a good thing. I mean, we also look at as far as the midterm that was that we had in October, And again, there was talk of, procuring new loans. And as I said, the biggest problem right now and what is killing our GDP is load shedding. And we're seeing it as far as the actual growth within business, within industry. But the other side, and this is not what we're picking up, but if we look globally with a lot of the slowdowns in those economies, is it's food shortages. That's the next big thing to hit us as a country, is where, a lot of the crops, a lot of those, things from a farming perspective have not been effectively plowed or planted because of the lack of power, electricity, diesel, all those kind of things. And food shortages is probably going to be one of the biggest things. We already see what we're paying for food as far as food inflation, and we know it's only going to go more.
Right. Now, Deon, how did gold fare against more traditional investments in the last year?
Scott, we've been doing our own case studies, and of course every month we do our newsletters where we look at various things pertaining to precious metals and economy and people's personal wealth. And we looked at an RA, and it was actually my RA that we did the whole case study on, and we did it in, I think it was June last year.
Yeah.
And we did a whole analysis over if you're taking those same premiums from my RA that I paid over a 13-year period, which totaled to about, I think it was 159,000 Rand. By the end of it, the current value is 192,000 Rand. But what we did was we said, okay, if you had to have bought physical gold over that same period of time with the same value of those premiums on a monthly basis, and we didn't take the price of spot, Scott, we actually we added a premium as far as the manufactured cost for the physical product.
Right.
And right now, as it stands, you'd be sitting on about 254,000 Rand if you had purchased gold over that same period. Now, there's two things that affect that, and the one thing is the Rand to dollar. We've seen over the 13-year period, I think initially it was around 7 Rand to the dollar when we did when I took out that RA originally.
Yeah.
We've seen what was interesting is when we converted that RA into dollars, the premiums outweighed the final value of it by quite a significant amount. So it actually ran at a loss.
Yeah.
And again, that's where we start to see from traditional investments how we were brought up, how we were told, these are the things you need to be investing on. These are the things you need to be conscientious about by paying off on a monthly basis, that come when you choose to retire, and probably 20, 30 years ago, 55, 60, 65 was the retirement age. We have seen that has been extended, and a lot of people are wanting to retire probably a lot later, some as far as into their early 70s. And again, these products are not geared to actually maintain wealth. And I know I don't want to be bashing, as far as your traditional investments, they have their place. But I think where bullion really sets itself apart, especially for South Africans, is this, very simply, is gold or bullion is hedged to a dollar, the dollar. So when you purchase gold in this country, we always look at the spot price, and we talk spot price for gold, silver, platinum, or most of your commodities, in fact, oil also. And it's all linked to the dollar as the currency that governs the value of it. Of course, we convert that from dollars into rands, into pounds, and so on. But the important thing is, from a South African perspective, because our rand has been slowly deteriorating its value to the dollar.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. We just lost you for a second there, but it's all good. Yeah. All right. Now, look, I just want to exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to be talking more about this a bit later. But just as an example about what Deon was talking about, what I'm showing you on the screen now is the old 1969 silver 1 rand coin. Okay, so that's just over 50 years old. The silver in that coin today is 12 grams. That means that this 1 rand in silver, and the value in that coin, is worth over 150 rand. Think about it. That's in 50 years. Anyway, back to you, Deon.
Yeah, you know, Scott, and I know we had chatted briefly about that this morning, but there is value in old coins. But again, important thing there is from what we're discussing here, it's about wealth preservation, and it's a very cheap way of accumulating a lot of a lot of bullion, especially silver, through coins. But you know, the big problem there, and people also need to realize this, is there's two parts to that. Is if you're a collector, there's a value to that. And the value is only ever really known to the market that's interested in it. And the other side would be, you know, the layperson that's wanting to accumulate and literally take their risk out of owning, you know, their wealth within rand-based commodities or rand-based investments. And, you know, coins and that can help with that. And the important thing there is, as you say, I mean, an old 1 rand, yes, it's literally half an ounce, nearly a couple of grams short of half an ounce of silver. And what I think is important here, and this is what we were, you know, with regards to the RA, are really trying to highlight here, is people need to start to look at investing differently. And, you know, we as a business, we spend a lot of our time doing quite a bit of market research. Everything we talk about is literally backed up by good, solid, you know, as far as our sources are always, you know, very strong sources. We, you know, I've said this many times. I mean, I love Robert Kiyosaki. He, you know, the guy that wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, yeah. But he's highly sensational. And he's been speaking about a market correction or a market collapse for probably the last 80 years. Now, he will get it right at some time. At some point, he will get it right. But it's that old story of crying wolf. Is, you know, if you keep saying it, when it really does happen, people are going to say, yes, yes, Robert, we've heard this from you. You've been saying this every single week for the last 8 years. But, and you know, for me, the important thing here is I don't, you know, as a business, we make sure that we don't want to be part on the side of sensationalism, of fear. And a lot of what we are, especially in the world we're in right now, Scott, there is so much uncertainty. There is so much, you know, uncertainty on even projections. I mean, when I was going through, you know, when we did all our projections and assessments on forecasts for the next year, a lot of top analysts were saying, if there's a major crisis, gold will be X. If it's not, it will be this. So they even not too sure where things are going to go. I mean, we just touched on Russia invading Ukraine. But, you know, we know that North-South Korea is also one of the hotbeds. We also know that Taiwan and China is another one. We just need a few of those dominoes to fall. And the world we know changes literally at the click of a finger. And that is also what we need to be aware of, is this is where people owning physical gold, physical silver can start to negate some of the losses that fiat currencies offer. I mentioned that gold and bullion is hedged to the dollar. It's just a monetary representation of it. When, you know, people say to me, but what happens when the dollar does badly? That's when gold and bullion generally increases and strengthens. And we're seeing that right now economically. We've seen what's happening in the States, and we can see that, you know, as far as the Fed and their monetary policy of trying to almost, you know, buy their way out of this recession or this imminent recession has not worked. You know, with them increasing rates and things like that, it has not worked. In fact, it's only strengthened gold. And then we look at it this way. Pay attention to who is buying gold. It's a lot of your central banks. And I mean, we're talking Russia
and China.
Absolutely. You're talking central banks across Europe. there's a lot of talk, and I actually saw one of your talks, Scott, that you had, where they were talking about it, and it is so true that there is definitely a collapse or a shift that we are going into, and it is completely unknown territory. We get a lot of market analysts saying that this is a period of time where it compares to, or it looks very similar to, a Great Depression, but again, we don't know. And there is just so much uncertainty globally. Then we look locally. We know, as I mentioned, you've got load shedding. We've got a government that is not delivering. And we as citizens are the ones that are paying for it. We know that the rand is tinkering, and we know it's going to go over 20 rand to the dollar. And it will keep moving upward to 30, to 40, to 50. And Scott, this is something that people also don't understand, is what does that mean when the rand devalues to the dollar? We start to lose actual purchasing power. So what we used to buy a product for a year ago when the rand was X, and suddenly it's dropped to the dollar, we start to pay more for it. And Scott, a perfect example, and it was also one of our newsletters from last year, was the whole thing on Argentina, and the sovereign default. And if you look, and this is shocking, and I actually had to recheck the figures this morning, because when I was chatting to one of my staff, and he mentioned the peso, the Argentinian peso to dollar was at 182 pesos to the dollar, and I actually could not believe that 2 years ago, January of 2020, the Argentinian peso was 59 pesos to the dollar. They defaulted in June of 2020. And like I said, right now, 2023, January 2023, it is 182 pesos to the dollar. But Scott, what does that mean? And we've spoken about this before, is if you had held 1 million pesos in an Argentinian bank in January of 2020, currently that value of pesos would be under, the buying power would be about 300,000 pesos in value. Now, if you had gone and purchased physical gold in the form of a medallion, and this is my half a kilo, Scott, I don't know if you can see that.
That's beautiful. That's gold.
Yes, 24 karat gold.
Wow, that is stunning.
So this,
I love the big five.
Yes,
that's my slogan behind my. So I just love it, and I do have your medallions. So I do love them. They're beautifully minted. Sorry, back to you.
So Scott, this is roughly 500,000 rand right now, and in fact, it's gone over 500,000 rand over the last couple of days. But if you had gone and bought in pesos $1 million worth, 1 million pesos worth of gold in January of 2020. Guess what that value would be right now, Scott?
Tell me.
So I've told you that the peso has fallen to the dollar from 59 pesos to 182 pesos to the dollar. If you had bought 1 million pesos worth of gold, right now you'd be sitting with 3.8 million pesos worth of gold.
Yeah. Now look, this currency fluctuation issue is such an important part of investing in precious metals, and people need to understand this, because how it works, as Deon has said, is that the gold and silver at the moment are basically based on the US dollar. Now, if Eskom collapses in South Africa, the rand, I reckon, is going to go up to something like 100 rand to the dollar. Now, you can imagine if you bought physical silver and physical gold now, you would have actually stored your value. But if Eskom collapses, the value of your assets, when it comes to cash in the bank and your pension fund and everything else in rands, will have dropped by 80%. That's the difference. This is why it's good to hedge with an alternative investment. And I know of people who right now, Deon, they're actually cashing in their insurance policies, getting the money out and buying physical gold and physical silver? I know of people doing that.
Scott, we have clients, people that approach us all the time where they've taken, and we're not advocating it. I must really stress this, is the important thing is people need to make the decisions that are best for them. I present the information based on physical bullion, but I've had a lot of clients that have cashed in policies and bought 1 million, 2 million, 6 million rands worth of bullion because they want to negate the loss of those investments based in rands.
Yeah.
And simply, if you look at the performance of gold just over the last year, I mean, it's lived up to it. I mean, just over this period from 2015 all the way through to now, the actual growth in percentage has been over 16.8%. Yeah, from where it was to where it is now. And the important thing there is we look at gold and we see it as as a commodity that can actually carry that value where we start to see things falling down. So for instance, like I said, if you look at rand-based investments right now, I mean, that RA that I'd been paying for 13 years, the value of it was 190,000 Rand. The premiums were 154,000 Rand.
Oh, no.
It's done nothing over that period of time.
Yeah.
I know the people that do make money from those, it's not me.
It's the
people that sold it to me that are making money from it. But like I said, is if I take in those same premiums, and this is what we do, this is why we started the MMC, our monthly medallion club, was for this specific reason, where we are allowing the average person they can't afford to buy an ounce of gold at 33,000 Rand right now. But we allow them the opportunity to actually buy grams of gold, silver, or platinum at a price point that is more palatable for them on a monthly basis. The lovely thing with that is they accrue those grams over a period of time. It gets to an ounce. They've got the choice to either vault it with us through Fidelity Security, or we get it delivered to them with Skynet, which is fully insured to your doorstep, literally.
All right, now let's just move on. Okay, so we've talked about 2022, 2023. We've talked about the craziness going on in the world today. Is there any good news regarding what's happening in the world today?
As far as good news, I mean, right now, Scott, as far as good news, there isn't really, to be very honest. I mean, we're in a position, we're in a time in the world right now where there isn't, as I said to you, even from an analyst perspective, and we consult with many analysts on a number of things with regards to gold, silver, and platinum. And none of them could actually give us a direct answer as to where the expectation is. I mean, as a business, we've maintained our outlook for gold and silver and platinum from last year, and we're pretty much sitting on that same thing. But from a positive outlook, I think right now where there is positivity is, I think, based on what's happened with the pandemic and all of those things globally, it's actually started to wake people up, the average person in the street, to realize that the days of us relying on governments to look after us or to maintain the way we live is becoming less and less.
Good luck with
and we as communities, we as communities need to start actually creating more of a community in where we can actually support one another. And I mean, you've seen it through Canada and you've seen it all around the world. I mean, I even know in this country, there are many little satellite groups of people that are starting to see things similarly. And they are realizing that it's far better to be in a group versus being on your own. And that is for me, it is one of the positives is we are seeing people starting to realize that the days of, having all your money in the bank is actually a very dangerous place to keep it these days.
Absolutely.
And so I think what we can take out as far as a positivity right now is I would say is that people are starting to realize that the way we used to do things is no longer applicable.
Yeah.
And I think that for me is probably one of the big things right now.
Yeah. Well, look, I just want to reinforce something I've said several times now on live streams and in videos, and that is that, guys, if you don't have some cash in home, and including small change right down to the 10 cents, then you're crazy. Because if Eskom fails, you won't be able to log into your bank account online. The banks probably won't be able to access your account. Your plastic card won't work. But if you've got cash, you can still go to the shops and you can still go and buy bread and stuff like that. So make sure you have some cash on you, and make sure that you have smaller denominations, because that Spar or that Pick and Pay won't have change. So if you go in there with a 100 Rand note and buy a loaf of bread, they're going to look at you and say, sorry, we have no change. So make sure you have change. Now look, getting back to the world today, what are the outlooks for 2023?
Scott, I think realistically, as I mentioned, I mean, there are a lot of uncertainties. We know that from a lot of top global economists, we know that globally that the world is heading into recession. And we know that if you look at what's happening in the States, and even throughout Europe, where there was this, even in this country, where all of our central banks were trying to increase interest rates to try stimulate some growth in the countries. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked. And we know that this is where, as far as an outlook perspective, we do believe that gold will continue to rally. As I've said to you, on the high side, there are some analysts that have even said that gold will go to about $4,000 an ounce. I do believe that is very unlikely. I believe that if we consistently look at how it's grown over the last 2-3 years, it's been consistently growing over the period.
Deon,
and so
I just want to put a challenge out to you, just to be the devil's advocate, and that is that in a year's time, early 2024, I want to have another live stream with you, and I am willing to this is a friendly bet that gold will be close to $4,000 an ounce by this time next year. And the reason I'm saying that is because I know what's happening behind the scenes when it comes to the World Economic Forum, things that are going on. We talked about a collapse which might not happen. Why it didn't happen with Kiyosaki, who for 8 years has been saying it will happen. I can tell you why it's getting close to that point, because everything is controlled. And when they're ready to collapse the fiat money system, they will. And then gold and silver will no longer be based on the US dollar, which will be worth nothing. It'll be like the Zim dollar. What it'll be based on is its intrinsic value, and that will just go right through the roof. You're about to go into, I reckon you're about to go into a store, stores that'll accept silver with the old threepenny piece, and buy a basket of groceries with that 1 gram of silver in there. That's where I see things happening, because it's a totally different world when fiat collapses. Back to you.
So Scott, I mean, interesting enough, I mean, as I said to you, for me, there is a high road and a low road to this. When I mean that, you got to see what's happening. If we do have a prolonged war in the Ukraine, Russia, and that continues, that is going to have an effect on supply throughout the world on various things. We've also seen the whole BRICS nation, how that's been built up and developed, the amount of countries that are joining it. So there's a definite move that countries are starting to break that, as we've spoken about it before, the petrodollar, or as I mentioned, most commodities are quoted throughout the world based on their spot prices in dollar terms, because that has been the global currency. We can see that's changing. We can see, as we know, Richard Nixon declared he took the dollar off the gold standard. And since then, modern monetary policy has been about buying there or just pushing money into economies to almost push them or buy themselves out of the issues, and that in its own right creates a bubble.
Yeah.
And we've seen that from COVID. We've seen what they did with all the quantitative easing, and we're sitting on that bubble right.
Yeah.
Now.
Well, look.
And something has to give. As far as outlooks, I do believe we're going to break 2000, and I do believe that probably we'll go through 2000, probably maybe about to 2050, 2100, and then we'll see a bit of a retrace or pullback. But I think again we'll finish the year strong in the around $2,200 an ounce with ease.
Right.
But where do I see it running towards the end of the decade? I mean, Jeffrey Christian, or Christian Jeffries. I mean, he is Jeff Christian. He is the CEO of CPM, who owns the COMEX in the US. And his projection for gold, and I mean, you must understand, they're one of the institutions that pushes the gold price down, within the COMEX as far as market regulation of the price of gold. I mean, he's even forecast that gold will be over $2,000 an ounce by the end of the decade. I believe it will be far higher. If we look at its constant growth, we look at where the world is, we can only see it increase. But again, I do think we will finish the 2023 in the high $2,200 an ounce, around there.
Yeah. Well,
silver. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Carry on.
Silver, on the other side, it's similar to platinum. It is an industrial metal. If there's a slowing up of economies, that will affect that side of it. That said, still, silver's biggest demand has been your photovoltaic market, your solar panels, and that has been growing at a 20% per annum, and it's consistently going like that. I mean, and I cannot see that side slowing down. So silver, interesting enough, I mean, we've looked to say that it will break $30 an ounce, and we do believe that it should push to probably even to the high 30s. I do see a bit of a pullback, and probably finishing around $32 an ounce. Right. That's if we don't have major changes, and if that comes, we could see silver go to $100 an ounce. We could see gold going to $3,000 an ounce.
Yeah.
It all comes where the world is, where the risk is, all those kind of things.
Yeah, well, look, I'm far more bullish on silver, but that's I think I'm the bullish one in the room. Now, I just wanted to discuss quickly the state of play. What's happening in the world today, and a lot of people might not realize this, is that Russia and China, basically the BRICS countries, which include South Africa, are changing their entire method of backing their currency. In fact, what happened to the Russian ruble when Russia invaded Ukraine was it dropped by about 50% in value in a couple of days. And what Putin did was very smart. He said, we're going to back our ruble from here on in with commodities like gold. And the ruble bounced right back up to where it was, from dropping 50%, literally within a week. So you can see the link between precious metals and gold and silver. Now, when it comes to America, America's got a huge problem. As Deon's been saying, they've just been printing money left, right, and center during this COVID scam. and they've got over $20 trillion in debt. And the only reason they can afford to do that is because it is the global currency. Once that benefit is taken away, and that's what Russia and China are chipping away at doing, they're working with Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia is pissed off with America. They're actually now talking about accepting gold for oil, which would destroy the US dollar. It wouldn't be a recession, it would be a severe depression in America. And the US dollar would just crash in value. I mean, that's a no-brainer. That's in the cards. And I can see Deon's nodding his head. Do you agree with me, Deon?
Absolutely, Scott. I mean, it is, like I said, there's a definite move. And I mentioned the BRIC nations. And when you mentioned Saudi Arabia, absolutely. I mean, this is all common knowledge, within the world right now. And yes, we are sitting on a tinderbox, literally. As I've said to you, there's a number of ways this will play out. And right now, the level of uncertainty globally is at an all-time high.
Yeah.
And again, this is where I say, pay attention to what central banks are doing. Pay attention to what big, your big hedge funds are doing. All of those kind of things. And majority of them are starting to move a lot of their wealth back into physical gold and bullion, because it negates this uncertainty.
Yeah.
The Argentinian thing is a perfect example of when it goes bad, and it goes bad very quickly.
Yeah.
How you can actually negate that and make sure your wealth is not just maintained, it's actually grows during these uncertain times. And that's important.
Yeah. Well, I guess for people who come from Rhodesia and who lived through the Mugabe years, I mean, if you put your money into gold and silver instead of having it in the bank, there's an extraordinary example of how you would have saved the value of your money. But let's move on. Tell us about platinum. You mentioned that it's actually performed really well. Do you want to just give a little, go down the rabbit hole a bit with that?
Yeah, listen, platinum's always had a very soft point for me. As I'd mentioned, Russia is the biggest producer within the PGMs of palladium, and interesting enough, palladium was the biggest loser in 2022. Platinum was, as I said, the biggest winner. Its growth, it grew consistently through the year. Where platinum is coming in and why it's grown is there's a number of reasons. As I mentioned, and this was even 18 months coming up to 2 years ago, there was a definite shift from an investment perspective globally back into platinum. And this was even before any rumors of war. And definitely that then started to happen literally January of 2022. There was already a lot of the big AutoCAD manufacturers in Europe and that were already switching across to platinum. And that's been a major, solidifier of its growth. But the second part of where platinum is going to grow and will continue to grow is within the green economy. I mean, we cannot escape it. It still will continue to grow forward. And where platinum has a massive advantage is very simply, we are moving into a world where most vehicles are going to be electrically powered. The days of having diesel or fossil fuel driven vehicles is coming to an end. I mean, there is talk that by 2050, we should have virtually very few of those vehicles actually running on the roads. The initial outlook was always batteries are the way, but the biggest problem with batteries is the power to weight ratio. And this is where platinum comes into it. And why platinum, and very simply is hydrogen is going to be one of the next major fuel sources. In fact, Japan, and we've mentioned this before on one of your shows, Scott, where they declared themselves to become the first hydrogen economy. And simply what that means is everything in the economy will run on hydrogen, from ships, planes, trains, homes, everything hydrogen. And platinum is literally the catalyst that takes hydrogen as a gas and converts it into electricity. Now, you know, when we talk about why would that be more effective than a battery, it would be you literally would refill a hydrogen a cell like you would fill a diesel car. Your distance is very much the same. Your weight, power to weight ratio, and when I talk about that, is a battery driven truck. Literally a third of its payload would be batteries to power that truck's engine, battery engine or electric engine. You know, so of course, when you talk about economics, if you are a truck, you know, and you're involved in logistics, it makes no sense to have electric trucks that are powered by batteries if literally you're going to lose a third of your actual, you know, where you're going to be making your money. So this is where Platinum will come in, and it's got a really, really exciting part of that. As I said to you, there's definitely a massive push from the investment side, and that, as I said to you, has been coming up to over the last 2 years. And when I talk about that interest, I mean, we're talking globally, and when I say investments, I'm talking about your major investment companies, or houses, or your funds. A lot of them have been, you know, we're talking to over 150% increase over the last nearly 2 years, where people have been moving into Platinum because of that. Platinum's exciting, and a lot of it, as I said to you, Scott, for me, it was the dark horse, and it actually finished the year in percentage as the definitely the stronger of the three. Where do I see it going, or where do we as a business see it going? We believe it will consistently keep going. I mean, right now it's over 1,000. I just saw it earlier. It's $1,073 an ounce. We will see that continue to march to about $1,500 an ounce by the end of the year. And again, I think a lot of that growth is in the autocats, where it's taking back some ground it lost to palladium years ago, you know, pre-2008. So it's interesting to see that it's coming in there. The other thing that Russia is also got a problem, and where their mining is going to be affected, is not just war, but and we've also spoken about this, Scott, is permafrost. So a lot of their mines are built in those big permafrost belts, which are hundreds upon hundreds of meters deep, and they are all melting, and they're causing a lot of those mines to be flooded. So if they're not mining, they're not producing, and they cannot pull the ore out of the ground. So there's big reasons why there's been that definite shift to platinum.
Right. What about silver?
Yeah, silver, again, I did mention, you know, we've seen that it went through, it's been the one metal where, you know, you always talk about the gold-silver ratio, and the significance of that is where you see the value of silver in relation to gold. So the gold-silver ratio is generally, for an ounce of gold, how many ounces of silver? And I mean, the lowest point ever was in March of 2020, where it was 126 ounces of silver to 1 ounce of gold, where silver completely collapsed to about, I think it was about $12 an ounce. It pulled back and actually grew to over 30 in early, you know, the years have just been passing by at speed. But
it was about 4 years ago.
Yes. But last year, January, when the Wall Street bets and the Reddit groups then started to get into silver, where they were trying to do that push to actually get the silver price to start to rally as it did in 1981. And you know, so there was that definite new investment and interest into silver. What that essentially did is it's actually brought a whole new age and generation of youngsters into this precious metal that we know as silver. Silver is like gold. It is money, and it is always been considered money as gold has. But as I said to you, where it does have a massive advantage, not to gold, but it is also an industrial metal, and where, you know, where it has its massive growth, as I mentioned, has been in the photovoltaic market. I mean, that has been a very strong driver of I think it was over 90 million ounces of silver alone that you know, that have been consumed, and that will continue to grow because the demand for those, and we see it in our own country because of things like load shedding. these alternative energy sources, and it's a global thing. I mean, throughout the world, there's issues with power, and there's definitely a move to alternative sources. We as a country, I'm sure many people go on, there's various Facebook groups or you name it, and people are looking for alternative power sources, because the days where load shedding was every once in a while, I mean, it's now, we can only expect this to carry on running for the unforeseeable future. I mean, I cannot see where we are with the government. I mean, a lot of the generations being diesel powered, that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And the biggest problem is a lot of our power stations are so old and redundant that it makes no sense to even try to keep maintaining them, because they are no longer effective and efficient.
Yeah.
So I do see that silver again plays a massive role in that. And silver, as I've always said, and I know, Scott, you are one of the big silver bulls, literally. and I mean, I love your story about what you did, where you accumulated silver and you saw that price run in the late 70s, and like you said, I mean, you bought a farm.
I bought a farm
with what 20 odd, yeah, and so that shows you the potential where silver can go. We mentioned, as I said to you, last year it went all the way up to about $24 an ounce, and it's been sitting there and thereabouts. So we kind of know the threshold on where silver, or its bottom, is around probably $18, but we know that it's now pushing into the mid-20s, and we know that it's not starting to stick more there. It's like gold. We know that gold will never, or I can't say never, but it's highly unlikely that gold will ever go below $16 an ounce. Yeah. Because the cost to actually pull it out of the ground, there has to be that literally that line, and from a cost perspective, it would make it unsustainable.
Yeah.
And again, same thing with silver. Is we know that silver is generally, from a mining perspective, is a byproduct of other precious metals. Like, for instance, in this country, in platinum, in gold, a lot of the especially in the platinum reef, your UG2, which is a very chrome-rich reef, we get 13 different precious metals from that reef, and silver is one of them. Same in gold. When we're mining gold, we're getting silver. So a lot of the byproducts that we get, so in this country there are, I think, 2 silver mines, and they're not even in production because of the cost of where they are. So we know that once it starts to push higher, the likelihood is it would make it more viable. But again, the fact that we are getting it as a byproduct to our other mining, that's where the economic sense says that we're able to mine it without really mining it, if that makes sense.
Look, I think an important thing that people need to understand, and we haven't really touched on this, Deon, is the fact that the silver price, as it's called, is based on the COMEX and London Metal Exchange paper prices. So the actual silver and gold price and platinum prices are not based on physical precious metals. They're based on pieces of paper. And the estimates are that for every ounce of silver or ounce of gold that is actually backing these pieces of paper, there's only 1 ounce for every 100 ounces being traded. So you've got this huge, it's a Ponzi scheme. So the real value of silver, in my view, is always at least 20 to 30% higher than the spot price. In fact, if you try and buy silver from somewhere, you'll always be paying a huge premium, because the spot price is quite honestly bullshit. Now, I've got a couple of questions for you, Deon, I just want to put to you. Michael has asked, what will determine gold's value when the dollar and other currencies collapse?
It's always had value. I mean, it's been how we traded, you know, from the, as long as man has been trading and bartering, we've used gold as that. Gold is a precious metal, and for some reason, this amazing precious metal that shimmers, you know, there's a value to this, and it goes beyond that. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but the important thing here is, where is it going to go with regards to if the dollar collapses? And straight away, that's why I kept saying is pay attention to what the central banks are doing. Pay attention to what your big investment houses are doing. Pay attention to a lot of those institutions, what they are doing. And majority of them are buying gold. I mean, we as a business are getting calls from Dubai, from Hong Kong, from China. We getting a lot of interest in people wanting to purchase gold. And I'm not talking a couple of kilograms, I'm talking tons of the stuff.
Yeah.
And it just tells you that there's a massive concern. And as we said, when or if the dollar does collapse completely, you know, people need to make sure that they can they can protect their wealth, because wealth isn't, you know, we always talk about money isn't your wealth. Wealth is what you hold in value, and gold is wealth. You know, properties can be wealth depending on where they are. You know, things like that. So they're tangible assets. I mean, we can go into the whole Bitcoin thing. And Bitcoin, I kind of think it's proving itself, where a couple of years ago in 2020, they were saying, oh, Bitcoin is digital gold or digital gold. And my argument was always, can I have a Bitcoin? Give me a Bitcoin. And the argument is, it's not a tangible item. And again, the lovely thing with this, Scott, is I can fly to you, arrive in Australia, and with all the information on the back here, which gives all the information that it is 24 karat gold, so it's 4 nines fine gold, I can go anywhere in the world, and this has value. And yes, we talk in the price in dollars that right now it's worth $1,900 an ounce. In rand terms, like I said, this is half a kilogram. It's worth over $500,000 rand right now. The amazing thing is I can go anywhere in the world and I will get that price in another currency.
Yeah,
and that is where the strength is.
Yeah, it's very easy to pass it on to anyone, anywhere in the world, because it's recognized globally as money. Now, I've got a couple of questions here from Henry, and they're very pertinent to this discussion. And he asks, and this is to do with your medallions. He says, when you buy these medallions, do you pay 15% on top? I guess that's the VAT. And are there any other costs? So, for example, let's take a 1 ounce silver medallion. Its spot price at the moment is about 410 Rand, which, as I say, is well under its real value because that's a paper price. What is your price for a silver medallion right now?
So, Scott, the prices that we actually quoted today, you know, pre-VAT, you're looking at about 600 Rand pre-VAT. We have to pay VAT. You know, as far as, you know, medallions are, let's get into that. Let's actually answer the question. So, Scott, you know, that's a Kruger Rand, right?
Yeah.
It's our sovereign coin. It's VAT-free. Why is it VAT-free? Because this is a sovereign coin. It belongs to the country. What I hold in my hand is, it has an ounce of gold in it, right?
Yeah.
But I will only ever own I will never own this coin, even though I may purchase hundreds of them at a time. The truth is, I'll only ever own the value of it. The difference with a medallion is very simple. When I buy that medallion, it falls into the same category and class as collector coins and jewelry. So, I've just dealt with this in December, where you know, we do a lot of business with Tax Consulting South Africa. They're one of our partners, and they have a lot of immigration and things like that. And one of their clients actually had immigrated, and he had 60 Krugerrands that he could not take out of the country because they are legal tender. You, as a South African with the SARS clearance, can only take out 10. And I know I'll have people saying, yes, but they've taken 40 and all of that. If you're caught, they will confiscate them. The difference is I could take this 0.5 kilogram of gold, right? And we also do a kilogram. I can put this in a box and I could literally go to ORT tonight and fly to this country and I'm not breaking any law. Now, if that same gentleman had purchased 2 million rands worth of medallions, and yes, there is a VAT implication, but you can, if you put it through your business, you can claim that VAT back. We also do personalized coins, so you could literally, like for instance, we've done the Rhino project right now. This is one of the things that we're busy with, Fidelity, that we've been busy with. Nice. And yeah, so this is the latest actual one of that. We had an older one, but I'm actually just diverting right now. Yeah. But the important thing here is medallions hold that value. Yes, you're going to pay the 15%, but the difference is it remains liquid. The difference is I can take those medallions anywhere in the world and they hold a price. As far as the Krugerrands, I am limited to what I can take out as a South African. And to the extent that that gentleman, I mean, that's 60 ounce Krugerrands that he bought. It turns out it would cost him too much to actually take them over. And I said to him, but when you immigrated, did your wife not take all the jewelry with her? And he's like, yeah, of course he did. They packed it and it went on the airplane with them. I was like, well, if you had actually had medallions, you would have been able to do that. And legally, no one could have stopped you. But because they are Krugerrands, because they are a sovereign coin, they hold a value in this country. They are paper, they are money. They belong to the government. It is government property. And so that for me is what that's about. Yes, there is a 15%. But again, what are you wanting to achieve here? What are you wanting to get over the long term? If we're looking at the way gold and that is growing, the VAT implication will be overcome with the growth of it over time. Do I recommend buying Krugerrands or sovereign coins, or VAT-free? Again, me personally, I'm a big advocate of the medallions because of where they fit as far as their class of bullion. And for me, it's important. We're looking at, this isn't, Scott, a lot of people need to understand this is not about buying today and selling tomorrow. This is about me buying these and accumulating. Yeah. So I either go and buy a lump sum amount, be it 50, 100,000 or R1 million, or however much you believe is what you can afford. The important thing is I'm looking to firstly negate my wealth out of a volatile rand that is collapsing. And we will see it go to 20, as I said, and 30 and so on. So we're trying to negate the loss of wealth because that's what this is all about at the end of the day.
So what is the price then for a 1 ounce silver medallion?
So as I said to you, it's around 600 Rand an ounce. With VAT, it's around 700 Rand.
Okay, so it's about 700 Rand. So that's just so that Henry knows that. Now, what about if you sell that silver medallion again? Henry says, do you get that 15% VAT back? In other words, if you sell it to someone else?
Absolutely. This is the interesting thing, and we do assist clients on that. Scott, you mentioned a spot price. That is a paper price.
Yeah.
On selling, generally, that's where it's sold at. But again, if I look at a client, and I did a liquidation sale, funny enough, today for a client who had purchased silver at probably around $16 an ounce. And I mean, she sold it today at around $23.50, I think it was.
That's okay.
Yeah, so she paid the VAT on it. So again, those are the implications there. Again, as I said to you, for me, this is not a short-term thing. This is about a mindset saying, I'm firstly making sure that portions of my wealth are no longer in a rand-based commodity. So now it's in a dollar base, but we're not worrying about the dollar because it's in its own thing. It's gold. So gold is going to grow. We know that. The rand is going to depreciate. We know that. And as I said to you, the Argentinian story is crystal clear on real value. 1 million pesos in a bank is worth even less than 300,000 pesos in buying power versus 1 million pesos purchased gold in 2020 is worth 3.8 million pesos. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Okay. Now that's great. Look, what I've got so many people who've asked me about how I've invested in silver and gold that I'd like to bring that into the discussion because, and I'd like you to comment as I go.
Okay.
First off, I should just let people know that I have got a lot of medallions, and I believe in medallions. You can see I've got the Big 5 medallion from Deon. So that is part of my investment strategy. But another big part of my investment strategy is buying old scrap silver. Now, Marlena's just said in the side chat here, please ask Deon about scrap silver. And I've actually prepared something for that. So I'm going to actually show you what my strategy is. Now, just for those who don't know, who are not from South Africa. Oh, and Deon, just before we get onto that, do people outside South Africa pay the VAT on these medallions?
No.
Okay.
No. So on export, and we do have clients outside of South Africa.
So they would pay 600 for a silver ounce.
Yeah, so they would claim that VAT back. I mean, it's one of the facts of it. As I said, and I don't want to take you're going into your story, but the important thing is, if the VAT is a big problem, like I said, and everything we got to do is by the book. We are, we have to comply to South African business law as far as what we do. We have to charge VAT. All those kind of things. The important thing there is there are ways of doing it effectively, and there are ways that you can have the VAT claim back if it's through a business and things like that. That are legitimate ways of doing it.
Okay. Now let's get back to scrap silver. What I'm going to do, because a lot of people really don't understand what this is all about, so I'm going to now put on the screen an image, which is of the old South African coins, and you can see you've got the crown. This is what the crown looks like in real life, if I can put it that way. You can see it's quite a big coin, and just while I'm doing that, this is what a threepenny looks like. You can see it's a tiny little thing, and these were the old South African coins, and you can see there's a 5 shilling. This is, for the record, this is pre-1951, and that's very important because the amount of silver in these coins changed in 1951 from 80% down to 50%. So that's a huge amount of silver that is lower in the post-1950 silver coins. Okay, so how much silver are in these coins? Well, there you can actually see. The crown has 22.62 grams. The half crown has 11.31 grams, and you'll see that they're pretty well going with the value. You can see that's half the amount of silver, and of course it's half the value of the coin. And then you've got the same here with the 2 shilling. You've got the 1 shilling, you've got the 6pence, and the threepence. And you'll notice that threepence, this is again pre-1951, it's got just over a gram of silver, which in today's terms is about, it's about 50 rand, somewhere around there. Now, the reason I've done this, the reason I've bought a lot of these old silver coins is because we have a known amount of silver in each one. And by the way, this silver is for coins in pretty well perfect condition. So if they're worn, they will have a lower amount of silver than you're actually seeing here. But the beauty about this strategy is that I don't have to walk into a shop with one of my 1 ounce medallions. I can walk into a shop with, let's say, a threepence, this coin here, with 1.13 grams, and it's so much easier to barter because you might be able to buy a basket of groceries when currencies collapse because it's got that known 1 gram of silver in it. Whereas if you go in there with a 1 ounce silver medallion, you've got a problem because you've got to buy half the shop. So this is, it's rather like today, the reason why I'm suggesting to people, get cash, keep it at home, but make sure you got small change. Same strategy. So just to be clear, these are the amounts of silver in these coins for the years 1923 to 1950. 80% silver. That's the key. The old Kruger coins, which came out in 1892 to 1899, they have 20% more silver. So on this coin here, it wouldn't be 22 grams, it would be about 26 grams of silver. So the old Kruger coins have slightly more silver in them. I haven't put up their figures here because they're very hard to come by. But these coins that you're looking at now, you can actually advertise in a newspaper, you can go to bid or buy, you can go to a coin shop and ask them if they have scrap silver. It's important you say scrap silver. In other words, you're not interested in a numismatic coin, you're just interested in buying it for the silver value. So if we look at 1951 on, okay, now again, these are uncirculated. You can see how the amount of silver has dropped. This is because they're now 50%, not 80%. So these pivotal date, 1951, if you're going to go into scrap silver, that's only 50% silver. 1950 and before is 80% silver. That's a pivotal date. Okay, so the 5 shilling, you can see you got 14.14 grams. The half crown, you got 7 grams. The 2 shilling, you got 5.65 grams. 1 shilling, 2.85. And you can see how the values basically halve as the values halve. So it's all pretty logical. And the threepenny piece post 1951 has less than a gram of silver in it. So that's a highly tradable coin for something of a lower value. And once again, it's like having change. This is why I've invested in scrap silver. So let's have a look at the difference in values here. And I want to make a comparison between the, this is the 5 shilling pre-1951. Its value in silver is just under 300 rand. But if we have a look at post-1950, in other words from 1951, you can see its value has dropped to just under 190. That's because it's got that amount of less silver in it. So it's really, really crucial that you get your head around that. Now, the reason I put these two charts up here is because you can look at this video later and you could freeze these frames and you can then write these values down so you know exactly how much silver you're getting in every South African old silver coin. And again, remember the pivotal date, 1951 and then pre-1951. Now when it comes to gold, you've got the pound, which is 7.32 grams, and the 10 shilling, or half crown, or sorry, not half crown, half sovereign, and then the sovereign. Now, the half sovereign, or 10 shilling, has 3.66 grams in it. So that's just over 1/10 of an ounce of gold, whereas this has well over 20% of an ounce of gold, the sovereign. Now, the beauty about these coins and the silver coins is because they are South African money, you do not pay VAT. There's no VAT involved. So you're not only getting the benefit of having small change, but you don't pay the government a tax because this is actually South African money. So I want to give you one final, and of course, just so you understand the way of working out the value of the silver in here, it's a very simple equation. Let's say you've got 1 crown, which is post 1950. It's a 1951 coin, say. It's got 14.14 grams in it. You divide that, and it doesn't matter whether it's 500 grams of silver you've got in coin or 14 grams. You divide that by 31, which is troy ounces. 31 grams is 1 troy ounce, and you need to get to that particular percentage. So 14.14 divide by 31 and then multiply by whatever the silver price is on that day, and that gives you the value of silver in that particular coin. So it's a very, very simple equation. Now I showed the example earlier of the 1 rand coin, and I just want to show you how extraordinary this is, because we're talking about just 50 years ago. There's your 1 rand coin, and I see Michaela's got 4 of them, and she was offered 300 rand each for them, and Michaela, I would hang on to them, basically. But that 1 rand coin, and I'll show it to you here. Let me just get it up on the camera. Okay, so that 1 rand coin has got 12 grams of silver in it. Okay, so it's got 12 grams of silver in it. Let me just go back to there again. So it's got 12 grams of silver, and today that 1 rand coin is worth, and I'll just get this up with the same formula, that 1 rand coin is worth 158.7 rand. Think about it. That coin 50 years ago you would use in change for 1 rand, and today it's worth 158 rand because of the silver in it. And this is one of the post 1969, you actually had to buy proof sets to get the rand. So 1965 to 69 is commonly when you'll find the silver 1 rand coin. They're 12 grams. From 1990 on, these same coins are at 13.875 grams. So that's my strategy. Just to summarize, the reason I've done this is because it gives me the ability to have small change. So I don't have like a 1 ounce gold bar, which if I go to a shop with that, I'm in trouble because as I say, you could buy the shop. Now it's interesting because we were talking about the actual proportion of silver value to gold. This is a 100 ounce silver bar, and that's a 1 ounce gold coin. Look at the relative sizes. Huge. This is something you've got to think about as well, because gold is so expensive. This gold bar in my hand, this 1 ounce gold bar, is worth about 33,000 rand today on the spot price. This 100 ounce silver bar is worth about 40,000 rand. So 32,000 rand for the little gold guy, and about 42,000 rand for the gold bar. Sorry, the silver 100 ounce bar. And again, it's the relevant sizes. You know, if you want to invest a lot of money in precious metals, it's probably easier to do it in gold than in this guy, in silver, because it takes up a lot more space. And it also reflects the reality that silver is trading at about 95 ounces to 1 ounce of gold at the moment. So anyway, look, that's just a bit of background to my strategy when it comes to investing in old silver coins. You got those screens with the grams for each denomination of silver. The formula I've given to you. It's a very easy strategy. As I said, you can go to auction houses like Bid or Buy. Important thing is, do not buy a numismatic coin. It's not a good investment. Only buy scrap silver, because all you're buying, very, very important, all you're buying is the silver in the coin. That's why you're buying it. So when you go to the coin shop, the first thing they're going to do is try and sell you an expensive 1959 proof crown, which would probably cost you about 20,000 Rand or something like that. Say, no, I don't want that. I just want scrap silver. The stuff that's just got a silver value on it. And if you've worked out what you should be paying in rands, then you can negotiate with the guy, because if he tries to push the price too high, you can say, look, I happen to know that this tikkie is only worth, let's say, 25 Rand, and he's trying to sell it for 50 Rand. You can say, no. So it's very important you do your own research on scrap silver coins values related to the prices today. And yeah, that's it. I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna hand back to Deon. I just want to get your comments, Deon, on what I've been talking about. Over to you.
So Scott, it's actually really interesting. I was listening to everything you're saying, and yeah, there's value. I put my phone onto the call because, of course, I can't see what your screen is. So you still do have the screen with the uncirculated all SA gold as the screen. So I don't know if that's what you wanted to hold on to, or.
Did everybody see the screens with the? If you didn't see the screens with the silver coins pre-1951 and post-1950, please, if you didn't see them, put 1 in the side chat. If you did see them, put 2 in the side chat. I think that's the best way of getting a response to that.
So Scott, I think you raised some very important points. As far as your numismatic coins, now I've had this. I had a client who was so proud of the proof gold Krugerrands that he bought, half ounces, and he said. So I asked him. I said, so how much did you pay for them? And this was a year and a half ago, maybe close to 2 years ago. And he proudly said, yeah, it was about 28,000 Rand. And I nearly fell off my chair, because that at the time is what you could have bought an ounce of gold for.
Yeah.
So, again, and we speak about the value here. The whole thing is you don't want to be paying excessively high costs on something. Like you said, at the end of the day, what makes that 1 Rand, it holds its value, is the amount of silver in it. So essentially, that's its value, is what the metal is inside it.
Exactly.
So you could have all these beautiful coins, and they are beautiful. I mean, there's some amazing minted sovereign coins out there right now, but you're either buying them because you want to have one of those, and it's got nothing to do with the real value. Because, Scott, I've said this to you before. I mean, I've got silver Krugerrands, and I've got one. I don't know if you can see me, but the one I have is from 2020, and that is the year my little daughter was born. So this holds value for me, because of that. That's the only real value it is. The only other value it has is what's its weight in silver and its purity.
Yeah.
And when you're choosing to sell it, or as we term it, liquidate it, that's the bottom line, is what is the purity and what's the weight. And that is where your actual value is. So any company that is choosing to sell you coins or medallions, and they're selling them to you at a premium because it's from the World Cup and it's a limited edition.
Don't go there.
Be very mindful.
Don't go there.
Yeah, be very mindful. be very mindful why you're doing that.
Yeah.
Again, like I said to you, our mission as a business is to make people realize that there are options in a very turbulent, uncertain world right now.
Yeah.
And that is by conscientiously making sure that people are taking and negating the losses of the dollar, of fiat currencies like the rand, how they are just going to collapse. I mean, we know the rand's going to go over 20 rand to the dollar. And that's it's not if, it's when. Is South Africa going to default on sovereign debt? Sadly, the truth is it's not if, it's when. Yes, T. Timber, when he was the finance minister, he was able to pull us back from that fiscal cliff, and he bought us some time. Unfortunately, he was very clear in what we needed to do to avoid a sovereign default. And we haven't stuck to any of the points he had highlighted at the time. And yet, like I mentioned at the beginning, I mean, we are, Treasury is looking to secure another $1 billion loan. I mean, it's just insane. And again, this is what it comes down to. It's coming down to protecting your wealth. It's not about today, it's about protecting it over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And that's where we as a business come in. And that's what we focus on, is yes, you're going to have to purchase gold. As you mentioned, bullion, especially manufactured, does come at a cost. It does come above spot price. And interesting when you said that, Scott, is if you want to see the true value of bullion, is you see what it's sold at in physical form. Exactly. And you mentioned that. I mean, if you look right now, an ounce of silver globally, if you go around, you'll see that you'll pay around between, I think it's about $28 to $32 an ounce. For silver, and currently paper price is around 24.
Yeah. Now, just on that point, Deon, just on that point, I see that Michael has said, where's the best place to buy scrap silver? Well, as Marlena says, bid or buy, but in Holland, you haven't got a bid or buy, so you can always go to eBay and, just be mindful of the price that people are asking for. Know how much silver is in the coin, see if it's scrap or not. But what you'll find probably is that there's always a premium, even for scrap silver, which is a point that Deon's making now. So let's say it's a crown, which say hypothetically is worth, let's say, $20 in silver. You'll probably have to pay $25 for that same crown. So just bear that in mind, that I don't think you'll ever get silver at the actual spot price. Back to you.
No. So Scott, you raise a very, very important thing. Is you must understand this also, and you also made it very clear, and I love the way you presented, the coins and the I think it was 51 and so on.
Yeah.
And as we can see, the amount of precious metals has decreased as we've gone. I mean, the current coins that we have, I don't even think we could call them coins. I mean, there's not even real copper in them anymore. I mean, it's a combination of nickel and a whole lot of other things.
Junk metal.
The important thing is this, is if you have to go online, and I mean, I'd be very, I don't know, if I'm going to go and buy a bag full of uncirculated coins, I'd like to make sure I know what I'm buying. But the second thing is, you must remember this, and now I'm talking from a person that where we do buy, we buy scrap silver or gold or jewelry and things like that. I mean, it's not a big part of our business, but we have had inquiries that from time to time with that. There's a massive cost to refine those. You must understand, especially in small volumes. If you bring a handful of uncirculated coins and you say, well, there's 25 grams in here, we still need to extract that silver from those coins. And there's a cost implicated to that people also need to be mindful of. So that's where, like you said, Scott, there will be a premium on them, especially when they need to be refined to get that silver out. And any scrap dealer will I can guarantee you, they will not be giving you spot price on it. I'd be very surprised.
Yeah, but I would put the argument, Dion, that you'd never scrap them. What you'd be doing is you would just be exchanging them. That they're not there to be scrapped. They're there to be used in times of trouble. And you mentioned medallions, and I want to show an example. There's the World Rugby Cup. It's a 1 kilo silver, and the amount I paid for that was probably about 50 to 60% above the silver price, because it's got a fancy little picture on it about the Rugby Cup, and it's in a fancy little case. But stay away from these. I've been caught with these in the past, and they're not a good investment. And just talking about investments, I talked about numismatic coins. You often find numismatic coins in a slab. That's called a slab. You pay a huge premium for these coins. Don't go near them if you want scrap silver. Just make sure that you buy, the stuff that's just been sold for its silver price.
Scott, you raise a very valid point there, and that, it actually, when clients do want to liquidate, I kind of sometimes think they've missed the point of why they invested in bullion in the first place. And I do understand that we all go through financial difficulties. I mean, I've been through a period myself, and I understand that sometimes we need to, in order to get this business up and running. I had substantial amounts of silver, and I had to use that as literally my down payment to get this business running.
Right.
But again, I urge people to understand that you're buying into precious metals, gold, silver, and platinum, not to buy today to sell tomorrow. If you're doing that, then this is not for you.
Exactly.
But you need to be doing this where you're buying it, be it you buy it in small amounts over a monthly basis, every month, every year, and you build that up, or you look to buy in lump sums when you can afford it. But it's about buying and holding, and you accumulating. It's accumulation over the long period. That this is what this is all about.
Just from a personal perspective, Dion, I just want to say that the silver that I've got, I've been collecting since I was in my early 20s. So that gives you an idea of the time frame. I mean, I've been hanging on to it. It's been back in 1980, as Dion mentioned, I bought a farm with silver. I sold at the right time. And, I saw silver jump in 1979 from about $1 an ounce to about $50 an ounce within a year. And I sold 2 weeks before the crash, and silver came down again. But that's how much money you can make out of precious metals if you buy at the right time and you sell at the right time. And the reason I've got silver and gold now is not to sell. It's actually because I don't believe that the fiat monetary system is going to last. I know they're talking about a digital currency at the moment, but I think there's going to be an alternative market, and I think precious metals, silver and gold, are going to be extremely valuable and a fantastic investment in the future. That's why I'm basically involved with it. Back to you, Dion.
Scott, I couldn't have put it better, and I think that ultimately is what this is about. It's creating awareness to make sure that people do have alternatives to what has been presented right now in the world, and there is a way of protecting your wealth. I mean, I would hate to have lived in Argentina over the last 2 years and to experience what they have, where you literally, as you mentioned, on this continent, I mean, Zimbabwe is a perfect example of that, where people's wealth literally overnight is completely obliterated. Yeah. And again, that's what this is about. It's about being conscious, being aware that you are consciously building up that wealth over the period of time.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, Scott, you talk about it. You don't need a large amount of money to start securing your wealth, but I'd say make it sensible. Yeah. You think about it. If you're purchasing an ounce of silver or on a monthly basis, those ounces become 12 ounces, become 24, and so on, and they start to grow. And as the price starts to increase, you start to negate the loss of the rand to dollar. And this is what I also say. I mean, our MMC, and I'm sure I've told you the story, was based on one of our biggest clients, where she, every month without fail, old Barbara would buy an ounce of silver. And, she didn't have a lot of money. She was a pensioner, and she was not in a position to be, buying more than what she could afford, her available income. And the amazing thing is that over the period of time, it started to grow and grow and grow. And that for me is what this is about. It's about, once you've got it in bullion, it's no longer has negative effects to what happens to the rand.
Yeah.
And that is what this is all about, is we trying to negate these uncertainties. We're trying to negate the uncertainties with regards to, we know it's coming. We don't know to what degree it's going to be. And like Scott says, I mean, Scott, you could be right. By the end of this year, you could be the one that where we discuss this and we say, okay, well, actually, gold is at $4,000 an ounce.
Yeah.
It's not impossible. I think if we live in a world like that, it would be quite a very uncertain and scary world. And for me, that's kind of where I want to be. We err on the side of things like that, where we want to make sure that I'd like to believe that as society or humanity, we got a little bit more going for us, that we can't completely implode. But again, as you say, there are forces that control these things. And we're seeing it. I mean, we're seeing what's happening. So there is so much uncertainty. And I think right now, that is the big thing, is where you're putting your money and why are you putting it in certain things. Is it because that's what you were told when when I left school, it was, just open a money market account and put a bit of money into that, or, go and open an RA and every month put in a small amount of money. That RA has been an absolute failure. And I can say that bluntly. I mean, it is a legitimate RA, and it's a legitimate company. It's one of the top investment companies in this country. And they'll turn around and say, well, the markets didn't do well. And the amazing thing is, when I do get to retirement age, which is closer than further away, and I have to start acknowledging that. But the scary thing is, when I do get to that point, and then I say, okay, well, I've been paying these premiums every single month, so can I have my money? Well, no, you can have half of it, and then the other half we will give you. That's your money. And this is the difference with bullion, is it belongs to you. It is yours. And that for me is the big difference, Scott.
Right. Well, look, I'm just going to wrap up with excuse me, just endorsing what Deon's saying. I've talked about scrap silver, but I need to tell you guys that, okay, I'm showing you my silver 1 rands that I've got. Now, that's taken me 50 years to get that number. So it's not something you can expect. You can just suddenly get, 100,000 rands worth of scrap silver. It's just not out there. But the advantage in South Africa right now, and it's very sad, is that a lot of people are financially battling. So if you do have some cash and you're thinking of getting into scrap silver, if you put an ad in the newspaper saying, look, if you've got old South African coins from pre-1965 going up to 1923, say over 1,000 rands worth, I'm willing to go out and buy them from you, because I think you'll find people who are battling would be happy to pay silver scrap price. In other words, the spot price of silver for those old silver coins. So that's one area that you could look at. And as I said, I did mention bid or buy or eBay, but just be very, very careful. Don't start looking around at silver cutlery and stuff like that, because there's a thing called silver plate, and so many people have been caught thinking they're buying something for silver based on weight, and they're actually buying something with silver plate, which is worth nothing. So stick to something that has a known amount of silver in it, and you can't really go wrong with old South African coins. Deon, I'm going to leave you to just wrap up this live stream. Any final comments? And look, we'll put a link to your website down below this video. We'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, so back to you.
Scott, firstly, thank you. And, I always enjoy our chats because, I get to learn a little bit from you. And I've always enjoyed the time that we have. And I do believe it's important. And for me, that's what this is about. It's about just making people aware that there are options out there. And I've had this many times. If I have at least affected one person to make a decision to actually put some of their wealth into bullion, and they don't even buy through me and they go to someone else, that for me is a victory. And this is about thinking differently and more importantly, thinking sensibly about where we're going. And right now, because there are so few options, this for me, it's been a massive drive to really get people to understand that things are not great. And, the more we allowing governments to control what we do, the less control we have for ourselves. And for me, that's what this is about. It's empowering. Yeah. And for me, that is probably the most important part of this, is look to see how you can empower yourself, how you can make meaningful differences to your wealth over the next 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, to the end of this decade, we are very close. We are 7 years out. Which is scary.
Yeah. Now, Garnet says, Deon is my hero. Just say. That's Mark G. Mark Garnet.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
All right. Deon, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And it's been an interesting discussion. And I'm pleased I've had the opportunity to share some of my knowledge about investing in scrap silver, because to me, it does mean the big thing that you got small change. You don't have to take a 1 ounce medallion into the shop to buy a loaf of bread. You can take in a threepenny silver with 1 gram of silver based on whatever the agreed price is. If fiat's collapsed, I can tell you now that little 1 ounce, that 1 little gram of threepenny would be worth a lot of money, because silver and gold will always be money. And when you look at the population today, there's a huge shortage of silver. You ask your friends, I bet you none of them have got any silver, or very few of them. And the same with gold, or they might have jewelry, but when it comes to actually having something put aside for a rainy day, I bet you very few have. Alrighty, I'm going to wrap this up now. Deon, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great evening.
Thanks, Scott, and I do appreciate it. And God bless and take care, and look forward to chatting to you soon.
Okay, mate. Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. That was Deon Robello. And, of course, we were talking about silver and gold, investing in those, and, of course, scrap silver. So I have had a lot of people ask me about scrap silver, so I hope what I gave you tonight has helped clarify that particular area. And let's go out with Op ons rots. Here we go. Take care, guys, and see you tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time.
Ons loop hand aan hand op goue warm sand, so baie wat ek wil hee, so baie dit brand. Ek staan op my rots, met golwe wat bots. Ons het geen vrees, want hy is in beheer. Ons sien al die planne van God wat werk. Die gevoel in my hart, dis vrees wat wil brand. Ons is boere met trots, met my hand in my bors. Ons ken geen vrees, want hy is in beheer. Ons sien al die planne van goddelose manne. Ons weet hulle gaan nie wen nie, dis geskryf soos 'n duif. Ons sal wen, aanhou glo, want hy is in beheer. Ons sien wat gebeur, die leer sal ons nie steen. Kom staan nog 'n keer, ek is stil, want ek weet, hy is in beheer. Ons sien al die planne van goddelose manne. Ons weet hulle gaan nie wen nie, dis geskryf soos 'n duif. Ons sal wen, aanhou glo, want hy is in beheer. Ons sien al die planne van goddelose manne. Ons weet hulle gaan nie wen nie, dis geskryf soos 'n duif. Ons sal wen, aanhou glo, want hy is in beheer. Ja, hy is in beheer.